Hi everyone, Mike here. Today I have a video that's a little longer than usual, but I really encourage you to watch the whole thing. It's just a fascinating look at the ongoings of this large flock of geese in downtown Saskatoon. Most of the flock was dining on a patch of grass across Spadina Crescent from the river. I tried to get in position so that I could film them, and as you can see here, the first batch of goslings start to cross Spadina. I should point out that this took place on the day of the Saskatchewan Marathon, so fortunately this entire stretch of Spadina Crescent was blocked off from traffic. So you can see there's a very large group crossing. The flock ends up crossing Spadina in several groups of various sizes. From my count, in total, over the first 3 or 4 minutes of this video, there were a total of 62 goslings that crossed Spadina Crescent. And from my count, that is the full extent of this year's flock. I was so glad Spadina was closed to traffic because the goslings seemed to be racing out whenever they wanted. Now, for some strange reason, this truck is not only coming down a closed street, but he's doing so on the wrong side of the road. I don't know if this was someone who was working in association with the marathon or just someone who couldn't be bothered to go all the way around, given that this stretch was closed. This little fella raced across on his own. If you watch my video till the end, you're going to see what I've observed many times is that over the course of the day, this large group comes together, splits up, and the goslings tend to move from one group to another at their own will. And as long as they're following one of the adults in charge, it seems to be up to them who they follow for the most part. Here comes another group, and again, I was surprised this day that the goslings seem to be running ahead of the adults. That's not usually how they cross the street. And I just don't know if it's somehow the flock realized there wasn't much traffic that day because normally they all line up behind an adult. So this was very unusual to me. You can see in the background the beautiful glass towers of Nutrient Place and Nasser Plaza. I guess not everyone thinks they're beautiful, but I find the glass towers quite stunning. Here come three more racing across to catch up. So there's one more group coming here. What I find very interesting is this last mother goose always seems to be way more cautious than the rest of the flock. She always seems to be a little bit behind and always seems to take a lot more time to assess risks and make decisions about when and where to take her gosling group. So you'll see another car go by in a second, and at this time, Spadina is still closed to traffic, so that's another driver who appears to have just ignored the signs. I believe about 6 of this 8 that are with her are her own goslings. She always seems to have at least 6, and she is very protective to keep those 6 with her and to keep other adults away from them. So with this final crossing, I believe I counted 62 goslings in total. I have a still photo here for a few seconds because I wanted to explain what's going to happen next. After the flock has been grazing across the street, They tend to go as a huge group down to the river for a drink. And most of them were there already except for the final 8. Watch the right-hand side of the video when it starts again, and you'll see the 8 goslings in the last group race to the water for a drink after they've been grazing. But then you'll also see the final mother race down and chase one of the geese away who was too close to her goslings. So this day the group stayed together for about 10 minutes in the water, drinking and splashing and washing their feathers, and then they all started swimming downstream. The goslings seem to just fall behind whichever leaders they want because the group sizes change from day to day and minute to minute. So I set my tripod up downstream next to the emergency boat ramp because they often exit there. You'll see here the first group has 11 goslings, and this leader took her goslings out of the water right beside my tripod, just to the left of me. The second group leader took their goslings up a little further upstream from where I was and started walking across the boat ramp. And you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, most of the first group of 11 goslings left their leader and raced up behind this group. I guess they were hungry and they wanted to be part of the first group up the hill to the lawn. A third group slowed down at the rocks. I think they were picking at some algae that grows on the rocks. They tend to do that quite frequently. And the leader of a fourth group had taken a different route completely. He had led his large group up over the boulders and rocks, and now they're cutting across the boat ramp to head up and join the rest of the flock. And here comes that small group that had been picking at the algae on the rocks. And I believe this goose right in front of me was actually that very first goose who led a group of 11. A few of his group had sat in the water and preened and drank and rested, and that leader had waited with them, seemingly very content to have the rest of his group fall behind another leader. So I've been following this large flock for a couple of weeks, for a couple of hours each day. And it sure seems to me that over the course of the day, both the number of groups and the number of goslings in each group just seems to fluctuate day by day and hour by hour. And the goslings just seem to decide what group to be a part of whenever the flock moves. Here you see 3 little ones racing up the hill. They fell behind their groups, but they knew where everyone was heading. And finally, here comes that mother who always seems to be behind the rest of the group. She always seems to take more time deciding when to take her goslings and where to take them. She's just a lot more careful about assessing the risks. I'm assuming she's just a less experienced parent than some of the others. But nonetheless, from my observations, she always seems to be the last group to head in any particular direction. It was actually a very windy day, and in a couple of seconds here on the right side of the screen, you'll see a couple pieces of garbage blow by and startle the goslings. So from my observation, it seems to me that when the flock is moving about, whoever the last adult is, and it's often this mom, waits around and ensures that any of the stray goslings who were left behind their group joins in her group. And you'll see here she's waiting as the last couple of strays come out of the rocks and hook up. Even now, you'll see she's been very careful about deciding where to head up to the lawn. She's definitely planning on joining the flock. You'll see in a few seconds here that she ends up choosing a path that goes through some bushes and plants so that her group is a little less exposed in making the move from the river up to the lawn. The video is going to end in a few seconds. I hope you enjoyed watching this flock as they navigate the dangers of the city, moving across streets and finding ways to get to their feeding grounds. I'm no expert. Any of the information I've shared is just what I've gleaned from watching the flock. In any event, I hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers.